I'm just starting to see these young people, as young as 18, abysmal testosterone levels and fertility issues. The lowest I've seen was an 18-year-old kid with a level of 25. That's total testosterone, 25.
We got to take our wins no matter how big or how small. It's always going to take time to make these changes, but I say just take pride in what you are doing.
Yeah,
Take
absolutely.
your wins where you can, adopt that mentality.
We've outsourced our water, we've outsourced our air to the care of other people, and they have failed us. Analyze your water. Look at how many microplastics are in there. Look at how many hormones are in there, unchanged. Those things can be filtered out, but the water treatment facilities generally don't do it.
What are we mostly breathing in the air that would be harmful? I don't think we're breathing in hormones, right? Or are we? Oh gosh, you're going to blow my mind here.
When you talk about...
I could tell by the look on your face. Oh man, I'm in for a lesson.
There's an estrogen right there.
Right. Hey, Layne, welcome to the Built for Growth podcast. I have been so excited to have you on here. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you. It's great to have you in our house as our guest, even though I'm your guest.
Yes, right.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to dive into hormones today. This is just something I think needs to be explored a little bit more, talked about a little bit more. And I know for me as an athlete, it's something that I'm always trying to understand on a deeper level. But I think a great place to kick off would be talking about your background and how you got to be here. So let's introduce you first.
Sure. I'm a pharmacist. The bulk of my career has been in compounding and specifically hormones. And I got kind of deep into the clinical side of it just to help service the practitioners that would send patients here. And it's been a very, very fulfilling and satisfying career for me. Most of it was spent where people think hormones are the biggest issue, and that is around middle age. But the fascinating thing that's grabbed me in the last 4 or 5 years is how many young people I'm seeing come in here now. A lot of them start here with me because they don't know where to go, so their friends will tell them that come here, and so they get the idea that I can help them screen for this, and so I'm just starting to see these young people as young as I don't see pediatrics, but as young as 18, and a lot of them just very fit. A lot of them athletes, some professional athletes, and they're struggling with these things that men. These are men. It's not unusual to see younger women. We'll see people with PCOS or other things that they're struggling with hormonally, because women are far more in tune with their reproductive system than men are. But these young men, they're just baffled as to, and it usually doesn't manifest itself until they try and have children, or they're at a point in their lives when they're trying to do that. So as I looked at this, I realized, wow, there's some darn good research that's been done on this recently.
And what is this? What are the hormonal issues that you're seeing young men have?
Good question. So, abysmal testosterone levels and fertility issues. When I say abysmal, I'm talking about the lowest I've seen was an 18-year-old kid with a level of 25. That's total testosterone, 25. That should be 400 to maybe up to 1,200.
That's shockingly low.
That is.
And what is an experience like that for a male, I guess regardless of age, but who has a testosterone level of, you said 25? I mean, what is life like that?
So this kid was interesting. He's a baseball player. And so very active, and he works hard at
muscular
his sport. No.
Yeah.
Because to look at him, he has a baby face, and he'll be the first to tell you that. His case was interesting because he had this growth spurt between his freshman and sophomore year, like a lot of young men do, went from like 5'4" to 6'2". So we had this spurt, and then it all seemed to crash. It just stopped. And that's when I say it all crashed, he noticed he's not getting the results anabolically from his workout. He's not seeing a response from his muscles, which he should see at that age, especially a kid that's working hard at it.
Right.
And motivation, drive, mood, attitude, he called it, towards what he's doing. Just
all those are diminished.
Yep, flagging, all of them. And so that got him in to see somebody. That's when they got that level. So they started to look at it, and he came to me after he'd been seen by a practitioner, and they put him on some testosterone. And it came up a little bit into the 300s, mid 300s, but it still wasn't enough for him, and nor would I expect it to be. But so he wanted to talk to me about it, and we sort of explored what was going on, and I'm still baffled by it, I have to tell you. And this is typical of these cases that I was seeing. There was not a clear explanation of what was causing this. So, I mean, ask him all these questions, you get to puberty was right on time. Everything anatomically was where it ought to be. There's just no good explanation for this. And
that's what you're looking for as an explanation. I mean, was he looking to not have to take testosterone? And what was his goal? Because I do want to talk about that, and I want people to understand that the simple solution might seem like, well, just go and get if you have low testosterone, you just go and get testosterone.
Right.
But there is a slippery slope with that, and there certainly is a downside that I feel like people should at least understand, potentially the consequences of just automatically supplementing a hormone that your body should make naturally. And then let's move into exploring if there's a way to, boost those levels naturally.
Yeah. His big concern
was dependency.
centered around fertility.
Right. Okay.
When he of course he wants to have the normal young man performing body that he should have. Yes. And when they put him on this, I don't know that there was I'm not trying to find fault with how he was treated, but he came to the realization, let me just put it this way, later on, that this could impact his fertility, and it does. When we introduce exogenous testosterone to someone who is low, we throw that into this axis, it's called, that involves the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and then the gland, the testes or the ovaries, depending on who we're talking about. And what that does is that the body detects it, and then it says, it doesn't know where it came from. It just tells the gland, hey, we got enough here, so you don't need to produce as much.
Right.
And that, unfortunately, a parallel message goes down to the testes and the production of sperm. And so when you do that, you risk rendering a young man infertile, or at least impairing his fertility. And so that's the concern there.
Yeah.
And that was his concern.
I don't think that's something we need help with these days, because as we'll get into, Dr. Shanna Swan's work, who I've had on the podcast, is already addressing from so many angles the continued impairment of sperm count and how it's continuing to lower and lower. So as you were saying, he had some concerns about, his potential future infertility. Was he looking to then say, hey, is there a way for me to not have to take testosterone? Is there a way for me to produce this naturally? Was that a question of his?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. And so there are some things that can be done there that cause your body to, or hopefully would cause it to produce its own.
Right. Is that more difficult once you have introduced exogenous testosterone?
Unless they have been really high potency synthetic hormones that are often stacked when you're talking about people in a gym that are really after just definition and a certain look. If we're not talking about that, then this is quite reversible usually. The suppression that giving it introduces. But see, he was low right from the beginning.
Right.
And
But
so,
nobody stops to ask the question.
yeah, well,
Why?
or not enough.
Not enough.
Stop to ask. So, yeah, there's a couple of ways that can be done, and he's tried one of those. One of those is Clomid, and that works in the hypothalamus level to block the message that testosterone converts to estrogen in men, and it's supposed to do that. Much of its benefit comes from its being converted to estrogen. The brain reads that, and that's a message that it gets that says, okay, we got enough testosterone. We know where that came from. In a man, it came from testosterone. So it's a bit of a surrogate messenger. And then if you block that, then the theory is that opens it up. And so now the testes have a wide open message to produce, to go, kick up production.
What is this you called? What was it?
Clomid. Clomiphene is the generic name.
Is that a pharmaceutical?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pharmaceutical drug. Requires a prescription. As he was telling me this, I didn't think that was going to work, and it didn't. Because he was already low. So I don't think that was the problem. That was the message. There are other things he can try that he hasn't yet. But with the Clomid, he stopped supplementing testosterone, and then he dropped back down to where he was. And he was miserable. So he's about to start some changes there. I just talked with him recently, and we'll see what happens if he takes the next step.
What else could that look like?
So from the pituitary, the hypothalamus gets a message, sends it to the pituitary, says, send the message down the line that we need more testosterone. The pituitary sends luteinizing hormone, LH. And in men, that's the signal to kick up production. HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin, it's an injectable prescription. That does the same thing that pituitary LH does. It's like a substitute, sends the same message.
Is that a hormone, HGC? That sounds familiar with pregnancy.
It is.
Okay.
Human chorionic gonadotropin is produced in high levels in pregnancy, and that's what most pregnancy tests are based on. Not all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes up quickly and high when you're pregnant. But in men, that's what it does. It sends that message down. And so that assumes if the fault lies with the pituitary gland, then this will fix it. We'll see. I think it will for him, honestly.
So this makes me think, I had Ben Greenfield on my podcast, and he's an elite athlete, a biohacker, an extremely intelligent man. Are you familiar with Ben Greenfield?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So he talked about in his 20s, at the height of his, athletic career, how he was testing for low testosterone as well. So just to kind of go along with how not uncommon this is becoming.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
So we get to that point, and I'll tell you about another case really quickly here. Is a 28-year-old, similar situation. He came in with a level of 176, having done nothing. This is what we discovered baseline, based on symptoms. He was saying we drew a level, and he did use HCG because we couldn't identify anything really from his history, and it worked initially, and then it stopped working. So that was puzzling. They did some imaging, and he had a small benign pituitary tumor, which is not uncommon either, and that can affect levels. I don't know, but we kind of run up against and then they just call it idiopathic because we don't know what is causing this. So that is what has led me in my career to looking for other causes of this. And so that's when I come across these statistics. Much of them are from Shauna Swan's book, and I know you've talked with her. Fascinating woman. The use of assisted reproductive technology, I'm going to look at this so I don't get numbers wrong, has more than doubled from 97 to 2012.
Say that again, the use of what?
Assisted reproductive technology, so that would be IVF.
Right, yes. Much more common now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any form of assisting, whether it's in vitro or in vivo in the body. Worldwide fertility dropped 50% from 1960 to 2015. And lest people think, well, just because people aren't having as many children, it's expensive, societal norms have changed.
Well, maybe some of that's true, but...
Some of it is true.
Yeah.
But so she tested, she controlled for that. And what they learned is that fecundity, which is the ability of, well, if you're talking about a man, it's his ability to inseminate and fertilize an egg. That's where his responsibility ends. For a woman, it's to conceive and take that pregnancy to term. That's fecundity. Fertility is just how many babies are born, what the levels are in the population. It's just a statistic, but that was actually more dramatic in young women.
What was?
The fecundity, drop in fecundity. So if people are saying, oh, well, it's just because we're not having as many children, well, but you have to understand that younger women are having trouble having those kids, and that's alarming.
It's very true. I mean, just, my anecdotal experience, it's like, I go, to my hairstylist, and yeah, we've been trying for the past 5 years. It looks like we're going to look into, and I'm looking at her, she's just, beautiful, maybe 28-year-old woman. And this is not uncommon. I am seeing this more and more and more, where one side or the other, and it takes two to tango, obviously.
It does. We talk about that.
Right, are having difficulty conceiving. So I think there are a lot of people out there who would like to be having children right now, and I'd love to get into, some of the potential reasons, things that maybe we can implement in our daily life, or avoid, or change, or just be aware of, right? I think this knowledge should be common knowledge. I think people should have a right to know these things.
Yeah.
What in our environment, our lifestyle, is affecting us maybe without our knowledge.
Well, so this becomes a concern because, well, first of all, for just personal reasons, this young couple is trying to have a family, and there's this blame that goes on and this kind of depression about it, like we can't do this, what is wrong with us? But it also, the reach goes far beyond that. We have been below the level required to replace our own population since 2007. So we're shrinking, and that takes into account.
Oh, wouldn't Bill Gates be happy? He must be. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
right?
to throw that one in there.
My plan is almost complete. It's shocking because there are societal implications there. Who's going to pay into the system? It's built on growth and us replacing ourselves and growing. And it includes immigrants, too, by the way. It's just all births. So that's a little bit shocking. General fertility rate in the U.S. decreased by 3% each year from 2022 to 2023, reaching an all-time low. From 2014 to 2020, the rate consistently decreased by 2%, except for a brief 1% increase in 2021. Now, and overall, just so you know, for comparison, it ranges from 10 to 20% infertility in this country. So when they say it changed by 1% of that 10, so 1.1. So it's not up to now 30 or so percent. So just understand how that statistic works. But
how responsible are men in fertility? Because I feel like it usually, through history and whatnot, has always been the blame is on the woman.
You're right.
So what is men's part in this? Well, and how much of a part do they actually play?
So it's really hard to actually assign blame in each case, but we can look backwards and we can see that if there was a reduced sperm count, and this is another interesting statistic, back in the 40s, about 60 million sperm per ml was considered adequate sperm concentration. The WHO used to say good enough was 40 million per ml. And then in 1980, they lowered it to 20. And then in 2010, they lowered it to 15.
Ooh.
Why are they doing this? Well, this is a problem. It's the same thing with lab values that you're looking at. Every
I'm glad you said it.
Day-to-day lab values. What are they based on? When they say within normal limits, who sets the normal limits? We have to understand that is not a normal with health considerations as the criteria.
Correct.
It's a normal of average of people.
Which may not be optimal.
Well, so if you have drift over time, you don't see that. If they just adjust the normal, then pretty soon, oh, well, I'm normal. But actually, normal is sick. Normal is not well. But they don't get that idea. And so there's this lull, and they get lulled into this sense of they're fine, and then they don't find out until they go and try and have children. They thought, hey, I can ejaculate. I'm fertile.
Right.
Well, the evidence is maybe not. So what I encourage these young men to do, and I did with both of these cases, is you guys need to get a semen analysis and see where you are. And one of them actually decided to freeze his sperm when he realized, okay, this is not as easy as I thought maybe to correct. So his semen analysis came back okay. Motility was not very good, but motility often isn't good in those things. Most of our sperm don't swim very well. And so,
but there are things that can make that worse, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's,
for sure.
Yeah.
So having that, the reason I like him to do that is so you can do exactly what he did. It's probably not going to get better. You might be able to improve some aspects of it, but this kid was already living a pretty good, clean life. I've gone over all this with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was a wise choice.
Was their sperm
Insurance
count
policy.
low, you said? It was low?
It came in as he said, okay. I didn't see the
Actual number.
The actual number, no, but it was enough. And also, okay, they can make work at a sperm bank because they actually filter and clean those, and they just save the best boys for the job ahead. And so those that are faulty, and they can even assess DNA fragmentation, which is that's a real concern. You talk about miscarriages. Men have a much more significant contribution to those than we realize, and often it's by DNA fragmentation.
Really?
The body. You know who the biggest abortion? How do I say this? Does most abortions, by far? Mother Nature.
Oh, yes, that's fair to say.
Yeah, these things, they get determined. This is not worth the strain it's going to put. It's purely an accounting thing for the body.
Yeah.
I'm not going to invest a bunch of energy in this if it's not a viable pregnancy. It's not likely to be a viable pregnancy. And so it says, gone. Often the reason for that is the faulty sperm.
Wow.
So how do men know this? They can get those numbers. Maybe it should be like a credit score before you date a woman. Here's my sperm count.
This is fair to say.
I'm good.
Maybe you'll set a new trend, a new cultural norm.
So let me just quickly, if I can. Sperm banks are a great place to assess the condition of men because that's their business.
How much does it cost to do that? I'm just curious.
To get...
like an assessment of a sperm assessment. Do you know?
Oh, you can do it $400, $400,
Okay.
$500.
So, I mean, that's a worthy...
And to freeze it and save it, about $140 a year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much as you would think.
Yeah. Okay.
But these sperm banks, their job is to put together a successful pregnancy. So they're looking for all optimal contributors so that have the best chance of causing this to happen. Well, listen to this. From 2000 to 2013, the same Boston students is the cohort here that they used. 69% were eligible donors. In 2013, it went to 44%. In China, 2001, a sperm bank qualified 56% of their donors. In 2015, it fell to 18% qualified. Then declining by about 1% per year for 50 years. Testosterone levels and fertility. That should be alarming.
It is.
to a lot of people.
I don't know why this isn't something more people aren't outraged about, or the very least really questioning what is contributing to this. So then let me ask you, do you have any idea what is contributing to this?
I have my theories. Much of the work done on endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors, comes from what we call epidemiological studies. And they're not, because these things are unethical to do going forward. You can't expose this group to a potential toxin and not expose this group when we're talking about making a baby. So it's very difficult to put together studies that meet that gold standard of, randomized placebo-controlled trial. So from what we have, we can look at things like urine concentrations of certain toxins. And if those are high, you can put together studies with enough people that they achieve clinical significance or analytical significance. And so we say, okay, that's probably contributing.
Right.
But because they're weak, people try and poke holes in them. And some people say, it's because we're fat. It's because we're not well as we used to be. And that's true. But they can also control for that. So if they've controlled for that, and these are all healthy people compared to healthy people, they're still seeing this trend.
So then let's just start with basic sex hormones. That might be a more simple way than saying, fertility, which I think all of it kind of has this trickle-down effect,
yes,
right?
Yes, it does. And that's why I use fertility, because it's such an important marker for testosterone. And they're usually just linked.
So how do we get our sex hormones in a better place?
These exposures to toxins and endocrine disruptors, we need a higher awareness about. It's all around us. We have outsourced our food, we've outsourced our water, we've outsourced our air to the care of other people, and they have failed us. We know this because all you got to do is just analyze your water. Look at how many microplastics are in there. Look at how many hormones are in there, unchanged. Look at how many toxins.
There's hormones in your water?
Oh, yeah. And they're not, it can actually just come from the urine of people taking hormones. But most of it, honestly, comes from agriculture. But it gets in the water supply and they're there. But those things can be filtered out.
Right.
But the water treatment facilities generally don't do it. So this is what I mean about you can't outsource this and trust that, oh, well, if it was that important to my health, they would certainly, there's laws in place and agencies that monitor this.
Right. Yeah. Don't put your health in anybody else's
not so much
trust or responsibility.
Yeah. So if you limit those things and you look at the main exposure routes, it's by breathing, it's in the air, it's by oral ingestion, and then by absorption through the skin. So you just look at those things and you put filters in place.
What are we mostly breathing in the air that would be harmful? I don't think we're breathing in hormones, right? Or are we? Oh, gosh, you're going to blow my mind here.
When you talk about...
I could tell by the look on your face. Oh, man, I'm in for a lesson.
There's an estrogen right there.
Right.
It's mostly toxins that come from pesticides and plastics and environmental exposures. And plastics are a big one because they just break down. They don't ever completely go away. They just get into smaller and smaller pieces to where they're airborne. Now their mass is such that they're just floating around in the air, and all you got to do is hold up a flashlight and you can see them. When those get absorbed, there are hormone disruptors, chemicals attached to those plastics, and that's how they get in. So they get in through our water as well. But the good news
are they
is
PFAS or phthalates?
Phthalates,
yeah.
Phthalates, yep. BPA, bisphenols they call them, or BPS or BPF. If it's a bisphenol, avoid it.
Okay.
They tried to replace those because nobody liked BPA, and that wasn't such a good They call those unfortunate, what do they call them? Unfortunate substitutes, something like that. That, wow, you satisfied a PR problem that you had, but did you bother to check if it does the same thing as the other one did?
Right. So when we breathe these in, what happens? They go in our lungs.
So if they're small enough, and that means like below 70 microns, I think that's the cutoff for the gut. It's 150, but if it's small enough, it will absorb right through the membranes in the lungs, the alveoli, and that gas exchange, just like it does with oxygen. Those go right along with it, and now they're in the bloodstream. Where do they go from the bloodstream? Blood goes everywhere, but to the organs is the big concern, because that's where they lodge often.
Didn't you say something about, was it strokes or the plaque buildup in the arteries? I think you said something about that and finding microplastics in that.
So there's some research the way they looked at the carotid artery.
Okay.
And that's a pretty good marker for cardiovascular health, because to the extent that that's blocked or there's plaque there, it reflects what it's probably like in the heart as well, in some of those big vessels. And so as they have done examinations, post-mortem examinations on those, and looked at that plaque, they found that those that were higher in microplastics or nanoplastics caused more cardiac events. So there's one example of what it can do if it lodges. We're not built to house plastics, things that don't dissolve. They're not water soluble. This is one of the first things in human history that we can't dissolve. There's a chemical for pretty much everything that we're going to come across, even wool, even wood particles, because that's what used to be in the dust when our grandparents were around. But now the dust is filled with plastics and these circulating things that are not soluble, and the body cannot get rid of them. It tries to, with macrophages that surrounds them, and tries every enzyme it's got, nothing. So it just sits there. And if it breaks open, that macrophage, it just is free to go and get absorbed by another one.
So does your body try to build a little case around it? Is that what you mean by a macrophage?
Yep.
And kind of just conceal it?
That's the immune system's way of getting rid of something foreign.
When it can't get rid of it,
Yeah, if it's not like metabolized in any other way. It's like, okay, call the garbage man and let's get this out of here. But if that's not working, so then these things can build up. How are they eliminated? Hopefully through the gut. They just pass right through. If they're big enough, they're not going to absorb. But we're talking about these things that are smaller. And the liver can filter them. But then the way the liver works is it sends it back into the gut through the bile. And it might get absorbed again, or it might pass through. And sometimes by increasing fiber, we can increase the odds that it'll pass through. So there are things that we can do, but it primarily centers around avoidance. We've got to just filter this stuff out. And you may say, well, that just passes it on to somebody else's problem. Well, I got to protect me and mine.
Yeah.
And if everybody does that, I don't know what else we can do. If there's plastics, you're not going to destroy that industry.
Yeah.
But so there's things you can do. I don't want to leave people feeling just, oh, what are we going to do? We may as well just die.
Yeah. Let's remind everybody, we're going to get to the point of, what we can best do, what are the worst offenders. And a lot of this, I think, comes down to where we're spending our money as well, right? So you and I were talking before this podcast, we were talking about carpets, okay? Carpets are a big offender. I did not know that. So I was really glad to learn. You said that you have a certain type of carpet in your house that does not have the microplastics. Could you talk a little bit about that? And just giving people hope that, hey, someday when you replace the carpets in your house, you might want to think about where are you going to spend your money? And I look at that as investing in your health, right? Because I love the saying, you're either going to pay the farmer today or the pharmacist tomorrow. That same concept applies with your environment. Either you're going to be willing to invest, which then you're not, if you're spending money on good carpet that doesn't have the microplastics, you're not contributing to spending or passing that along, right? Because you're not investing in one more carpet being made from this manufacturer, you know? So just for food for thought. But we are going to get to a little bit more of an enlightening note where we're going to talk about what we can do and how we can help.
Yeah, I love that.
So carpet.
I love that view that you've got, but it's it's a view that's hard to get people to catch that vision because it's so delayed.
It is. It's hard until you start feeling good about making small changes.
Mm-hmm.
When you find reward in making small changes, you're going to feel better instantly because it's here in your mind and in your heart when you know that you've done something better.
Right. You're absolutely right.
I feel better about drinking out of this glass container right here. Mm-hmm. I'm lifted in my mood by simply making that choice. If I had grabbed a plastic water bottle, it would have diminished my mood just a little bit because I would have felt like I know better, I can do better. It's a bit of a small failure on my part. That's me personally. It's a small action that I took that I am proud of myself for this day. This was a win for me. Right?
I love that approach because that's irrespective.
Oh, there's a microplastic right in front.
Yeah, get it.
Floating. Get out of here.
I see it. That's irrespective of what it is actually doing. It's just there's something to be said. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm proud of bringing my metal water bottles, my stainless steel water bottles everywhere, and my children drink out of those. Like that's a win for me. Mm-hmm. That is something that makes me feel good every single day.
And what does feeling good do? It reduces cortisol, which reduces inflammation. It keeps you in a calmer state, and that's always valuable.
Yeah, so we got to take our wins no matter how big or how small, and it's always going to take time to make these changes, but I say just take pride in what you are doing.
Yeah.
Take
absolutely.
your wins where you can, adopt that mentality.
Yeah, so when we're talking about carpet, people are going to say, I can't afford to replace my wall-to-wall carpet. Okay. I understand that. One thing you could do is you might be able to cover some of it with a rug. With what material, you may ask? Excuse me. I like wool. There are so many different kinds of wool that you can get to where they are. I mean, it has a reputation of being scratchy and not comfortable. No, there are a lot of wool products that are very, very comfortable and soft. They cost a little bit more, but again, like you said, it's an investment. And when you do that next time, just keep that in the back of your mind. Oh, I remember what they said about that. Okay, let's look at those choices now. Instead of the nylon, instead of the polyester, which is what you see floating around here, I can make a better choice. Maybe there's hemp.
Yeah.
There are other products. I can't think of the other one.
Well, if more and more people started to shift the way that they bought these things, the prices would actually eventually be able to come down because these manufacturers who are making this small batch would be able to make bigger batches.
Love that point.
Okay,
you vote with your wallet.
Right.
You do. If you buy it, they'll make more, and if you don't buy it, they'll make less.
There we go.
Yeah, that definitely drives it. So there's that. And if you just think about textiles throughout your house. Carpet's just one of them. It's a big one because it covers so much surface area. But there's clothing, probably the biggest one, honestly.
Right. I think about all my leggings and stuff. I know they're full of plastic.
Yeah, and all you got to do is think about your dryer lint filter.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And all that, what you're not seeing is that all happens in the washer as well. And that washes out through your drain and down into the water system to the waste reclamation site where it does not dissolve there either. It just settles into the sludge from the wastewater plant. And do you know where that goes?
Probably out in the ocean, right? I know.
About half of it.
Jumping too far ahead. Eventually.
It might be a little worse, actually. About half of it goes onto agricultural land and on home gardens and as fertilizer.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, great. So now it's in my carrots and my broccoli, so I can eat it again and complete the cycle.
Yeah.
So,
well, no matter where it goes, it's coming full circle, even if it goes to the ocean, because then it's going in the fish, right? Yeah. And so you do your best at the point of entry into your world. You have a filter.
Because if you don't have a filter, you are the filter. Your body is the filter. And I don't think I want to use my lungs or my brain or my arteries as the filter for bad things. So those are important sources of those things. There's personal care products, phthalates and toxins, heavy metals are notorious in cosmetics. And do you know that no government agency analyzes or approves any of these before they hit
I did
the market?
know that.
Yep.
Yes, I did. But I'm glad you shared that with the listeners because that might be surprising. Again, we automatically assume that anything that could be carried on a shelf is somewhat regulated or safe.
Yep.
Not necessarily.
So I'm okay to let them. Certainly, it wouldn't be being sold here if there was a problem with it. Well, you've got to check those things. How do you check those things? Look, it's impossible for anybody to keep track of all of these chemicals.
Yeah.
There are certain families of them. So what you do is you use an app.
Yeah.
You use a good app like Yuka or it's the one by EWG, Healthy Living. That's a good one too.
Okay.
These you can scan a barcode right in the store, and it will bring up what's in them if it's in their database. And most things are, they're pretty big databases, and which of those might be a concern, and references. So you can check it and make your own decision. But you're making a decision. You're deciding.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. There are broad swaths that you can take and just say anything with fragrance in it, I'm not taking it.
Right. We think about essential oils, though.
Essential oils are okay. It depends on what we're going to be used for.
Okay.
Some of them, I don't like lavender because there are case studies out there that show it's really compelling because they have pictures of these toddlers, young, even babies, and they have breast development, boys and girls, using a lotion that has lavender in it for calming before bed.
Oh, my goodness.
When the mother stopped using it, those breast buds, they went down, they went away.
My goodness.
So lavender is one I try and avoid.
Yeah.
There's some evidence about tea tree oil, but it's not as
I was not planning on asking this, but what do you use for a deodorant then? You go al natural?
I do.
Okay, that's great. I don't see anything wrong with that. I end up having to shower more, obviously, when I do that. Like a good old sponge bath sometimes in the bathroom. Like, oh man, gotta make sure I obviously don't want to stink. And this is a hard sell for most people because, some people just don't naturally have as much body odor, and some people do.
Right.
I'm somebody who needs something. I use the salt blocks. You heard of those? Like Crystal, I think, is the brand.
I have heard
and they're
of
a
those.
mineral. They're like a mineral salt block.
Mm-hmm.
They work great. They don't have a scent, but they block odor.
Well, you don't want a scent. Everybody wants to block odor. You don't really.
I wouldn't say block even. I don't know. It neutralizes it somehow.
Okay.
So I still sweat. I just don't have the smell. And I'm really glad because I'd searched for a while. I'd used Tom's. I'd used a bunch of different natural, and they didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't work. And I was like, God, I don't want to smell, but I don't want to put those fragrances, those chemicals, the aluminum, you hear the phthalates. I didn't want to put that right in my armpit. It was like a sensitive area, right?
Yep.
So I found the mineral salt block, and I swear it's going to last me like 10 years because it just never disappears. It just, I do have to take about 30 seconds. You have to get your armpit really wet. You get about 30 seconds because you think about salt dissolving. That's kind of how I think about it in my mind. How long would you have to stir a glass of water for? So you're kind of like 30 seconds per armpit. It takes a little bit longer.
I think you just have to try things.
Yeah.
But I would avoid aluminum.
Yeah.
That's just one of the big ones. And you just have to determine, how does this work for me or does it not? For me, it is. I don't sweat a lot. Yeah. Maybe I should do things more that make me sweat. But if I do, then I'm going to shower and have that be part of it. But it's a very good question because personal care products are a big deal, and you can vet those deodorants too on these apps, and I like them. I found them to be reliable. Dust is a big one. I mentioned fragrances. So what about dust? Well, you need to dust regularly. And you need not to have clutter in your house, because what is clutter? It's areas that don't get cleaned.
Yeah.
Because if the clutter's there, you have to move it to clean. And if your dust builds up, then where does that go? It just goes in the air.
Right.
So, and it's also on your furniture. So you got to vacuum regularly with a HEPA filter vacuum, and vacuum the furniture. That's got to be done.
That's to eliminate one of the bigger endocrine disrupting factors.
Yep, absolutely. That's
Some people might not be ready for that one yet.
Yeah, and I say once a week is fine. But,
okay,
but
that's reasonable.
If you do it without a HEPA filter, you're just
throwing it all around.
You're just shuffling the deck and throwing it back in.
Okay, good point. I think I need to invest in a new vacuum.
Vinyl flooring is a big one, because it makes a flooring project so much more affordable. But that stuff is shedding all the time, and vinyl is not a good. It's got chlorine in it. It's just not a good substance to have around your living environment. So if you can avoid that, see, again,
I think I'm guilty of that one. I'm pretty sure ours are not. Well, I mean, most people are, huh?
Oh, absolutely, hundreds of thousands of us. So you just keep that in mind if you're going to replace it or you're going to do a new build. Then we got to look at. Can we look at wood? Can we look at manufactured wood?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, straight solid hardwood. And there's a lot of really good manufactured products that look just like blank hardwood.
Yeah.
But
maybe you can get in on a couple of friends or people, or find it. There should be like a Facebook community that you could start with this, where you could say, hey, let's all go in and buy a bigger bulk, right? I'm trying to think of how to make this more affordable, but why not? Why not a Facebook group? I belong to a kefir grain, SCOBY, group where people share these things. Like, why not flooring in a house? Like, why can't we do that? Right? That's a good idea. And then you can go in, and when you buy things in bulk, you get them cheaper. So more people to go in on it with you.
That works.
Okay. So what else?
We have a product that we developed. It was an online product. It's called My Exposure Score, and it takes you through your house and just walks you through the kitchen, the bathroom, all your living spaces, even questions about the yard and what you use in the yard, and it helps you to assess what your current exposure is. We're still working on that. We're reworking it. So I'll try and have that up on our website, hormonespecialist.net. But because people do need help thinking about these things, especially the kitchen. Let's walk through the kitchen.
That's got to be one of the biggest areas, I feel like, where this all happens. I mean, we've talked about some things that might not be easy for people to change right away. Mm-hmm. But I feel like in the kitchen, there's a lot of room for improvement. And I know you're talking a little bit environmentally, but I'm talking about, are you using a black plastic spatula? Mm-hmm. That's an easy fix. Are you using a Teflon pan? Go to stainless steel, or,
what's wrong with a black plastic spatula?
I think it's one of the worst offenders, isn't it? It's like recycled black plastic, and it just sheds microplastics like nobody's business, right?
Yeah. And where are a lot of black plastics found? In home electronics.
Yeah.
And those generally have a component of fire resistance to them. Those fire-resistant chemicals are forever chemicals called PFAS, polyfluoride alkyl substances, which don't go away. They're hard to eliminate from the body. They're very hard to eliminate from the environment.
They call them forever chemicals, right?
Yeah, and this may surprise people, but I shun recycled plastic because I don't know where it came from. I don't know what kind of plastic it is. I don't know what it was used for before. So it doesn't impress me, and it doesn't impress a lot of people because we only recycle like 2% of our plastic that can be recycled. Yeah. So it's not a real solution anyway.
It's not a real solution.
Better decisions about what your dinnerware is made of, what your cups are. Glass. Use glass. Use china. Use
stainless steel.
Stainless steel.
I have
ceramic.
Stainless steel plates at home, and I have stainless steel little cups for the kids. And
really?
We use them all the time, and non-breakable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's good. It's better than plastic.
Yep, it is.
We use that all the time.
Food storage containers is another big one.
Mm-hmm. I've switched all to glass.
Mm-hmm. All to glass, which have a plastic lid usually, but you can get silicone lids.
Yeah, or you just don't fill it to the point where it touches the lid. That's usually what I try to do.
Yeah.
And if it is going to touch the lid, okay, this is where I don't go insane. Okay.
Yep.
You can drive yourself crazy with
Perfect.
all this information, right?
Absolutely.
And like, hey, where is the point where you feel good or you don't feel like the life is being sucked out of you because you're trying so hard to avoid all these things? We live in a world where it's going to be less than perfect. And I think we have to be a bit tolerant of that, because when we stress about it, there's all this hormonal cascade of effects. And we were mentioning this a little bit before the podcast too, but cortisol is not a place where we're meant to live. Right? We're not supposed to live in a high stress state.
Absolutely
So if
not.
this, for the listener, if this causes you more stress than it's worth, don't cross that bridge yet.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like,
Yep.
make a small change. Do
It's
what
a
you
spectrum.
can.
It's a continuum.
It's a continuum. And I have, like, peeling back layers of an onion. I didn't do this all overnight. You know, it was probably 9 years ago that I started not drinking out of plastic water bottles, because I just heard that it was linked to hypothyroidism, and I had been diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So I said, well, look, that's not a hard change. What can I, sure, okay, I'll just start drinking out of stainless steel water bottles. It's not too much to ask. And then it's been sort of a cascade for me there. I eventually switched out my storage containers to glass.
It's contagious.
Eventually got rid of my Teflon pans. And it, just over time, I started to make better decisions that, again, are wins for me. Every time I pull out a glass Tupperware container, I'm like, that's a win.
Yeah.
I feel good about that.
You do. You feel good about it, and that's there's something to be said for that positive energy. It's when we talk about these kind of things, it's best if you can to keep overriding principles in your mind. What causes things to leach from plastics? Liquids,
Okay.
especially fatty liquids,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and
Okay.
hot things.
Hot.
So when you're talking about using a glass container and you put your cut-up vegetables in this Pyrex dish or something, and you put a plastic lid on it, it's not touching it. It's not liquid. It's not fat. It's not hot. Fine.
Okay.
Just that's okay. These are the decisions that it has to be. There's common sense involved.
Right.
Don't knock yourself out and just go crazy over this stuff.
And I want the listener to understand that this is a lot of information, and we're just trying to give you as much knowledge in an hour or so as we can, and you take what you can away from it and just make some positive changes and feel good about that.
Yep.
It's not meant to overwhelm. You could always revisit this podcast in a year, see what you've done, and what else maybe you want to do.
Exactly. And and if so, to get us bring us back full circle to hormones, when you're living a clean life, the benefits that are going to come to you are going to be just manyfold. Hormone optimization is just one of them, but it's going to be better. But if you still need hormones because your body's just not making them anymore. Menopause is a good example. Older, middle-aged men, we just stop making as much testosterone. If you need to supplement it, then that's fine. And that's where compounding pharmacies come into play. And not all the products even need to be compounded. Some of them are available commercially. And we can talk about that. I don't know if we have time today, but
Can I ask you, I do want you to clarify, when we say hormone disrupting, let me see if I explain this in a way that's right, and please, I would love for you to improve on what I'm saying. But the way that I kind of look at this, when we drink out of plastic and we have these, or any endocrine disruptor, but I'll use plastics as an example, that disrupts my testosterone, my estrogen, I think about this little molecule, or whatever the proper term of it, is that right? Mm-hmm. Sitting in my receptor. So there's like a seat that testosterone is supposed to take. There's a seat that estrogen is supposed to take, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you have this endocrine disruptor, it sits in that seat. So it takes the space. So testosterone's kind of like floating around out there like, what am I supposed to do? I can't connect to my seat and do my job. I can't connect to my receptor. So I think that would be free testosterone, right? That's outside. Is that right or no?
Free testosterone is what is not bound to plasma proteins, which it has to have as to be a carrier because it's not soluble in blood.
Okay.
But
so
and free, by the way, is the only hormone that can attach to a receptor.
Right. Okay, so sometimes I feel like when these hormone panels are done, they look at the free testosterone, but that isn't always like the full picture of like maybe what's blocking the receptor, right? What's already sitting in that receptor,
Yes,
the endocrine disruptor. So you might have a high free testosterone, right? But if you have this little guy that's sitting there and not doing the job of testosterone, then the testosterone can't essentially sit in that chair and do the work that it's supposed to do.
That's actually very insightful, Misha. It's because that is what happens. You've got, and it's not black and white. They're flying off and on all the time. But the more a disruptor is occupying that space, the less it's going to be available for the real thing to get in there. And this is why I don't like phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens mean it comes from plants. It's a natural thing. People love it's natural. This is why don't I take that? Well, because it's not near as strong as estradiol, which is what your body is looking for and makes. And so you've just done a trade-off. You've traded $1 for a 50-cent piece.
Right.
And there's also the fact that these things aren't standardized. So you can have a different amount from this batch of, say, your soy yogurt and this next batch.
So you're not talking about pharmaceuticals here. You're talking about eating.
Phytoestrogens that come from plants, eating. Because a lot of women want to treat their hormone issues with a plant-based phytoestrogen. Some of them use nuts for that. And it's just, I don't like it because of the imprecision. Maybe that's the pharmacist in me. But why would I trade something that I know, a known concentration, and I know that that's what the body receptor was designed for? Why would I not use that if I need estrogen?
Right.
The other is just too unpredictable. And if it's because of fear of cancer, that's old information.
Okay.
It is not true. Estradiol, the way your body makes it, is not harmful.
You looked at my labs and you said, "Oh, your estradiol, that's a great number."
It is. I mean, it was.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good number.
It's healthy for what it should be at that point in your cycle, and estradiol is incredibly important.
Do you know what an estradiol number should be around?
Estrone?
Or estradiol?
Estradiol? Yeah, it depends on where you are in your cycle, but that's easier to answer for postmenopausal women, and we like that to be. We're trying to imitate a mid-luteal phase level, which is about 10 to 20.
Okay.
Sorry, that's progesterone. Estradiol about 70. Sorry.
Okay. It's interesting. All these things are, it's so much food for thought. But I did want to give the listener a chance to understand why these endocrine disruptors are so terrible. Like, what does the disruption mean? It means that it sits in the seat and doesn't do the job and blocks your natural hormones from doing what they need to do.
And that's just one mechanism. It has several. It could get in the way of an enzyme. It could get in the way of a cofactor or something else that the endocrine system needs to do its job. That's why they call them that. It's a general term.
Yeah.
But yeah, and when people understand that, they will understand why they should filter their water. And you have to use an RO filter, reverse osmosis, because that's the only thing that will get these small particles that you need. It'll get a 0.0001 micron particle, and that's nanoparticle. That's really small. It'll get hormones, it'll get toxins, it'll get heavy metals, it'll get hormone disruptors, phthalates, BPH, PFOS, all of those things. They can't get through it. But it also takes out minerals.
Yes, it does.
So
I have a reverse osmosis. I mean, it takes everything out of the water.
Yeah.
You kind of got to add it back in.
You do, yep. And I recommend that too. One quick thing,
Sure.
so we can leave this complete. The air filter must have carbon in it, because that's what will grab on to those. It will adsorb those hormone disruptors. It'll take essentially all of them out. If it's not, you're not going to get them all. Okay. So make sure there's carbon in your HEPA filter for an air filtration system. And there's a section on my webpage called Layne's Likes, and I've gone through and I've reviewed a lot of these air filters, water filters, and I've settled on. It gets overwhelming. It's like, just tell me which are some good ones that I can try, and I don't make anything on those recommendations. So find out what needs to be in those things, what needs to be in your furnace filter. It needs carbon there too.
Yeah.
And then make sure you get the right thing, and you're filtering water, air, and your bioinorganic food.
Okay.
It's not a perfect guarantee, but it's the best we got.
It's the best we've got. We got to do the best we can do.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like that's a great closing point, but I don't want to let you go yet. So I still had another point.
I set you up for it, and
I know.
on we go. I love it.
We're continuing on. Too much momentum. I really wanted to touch on sleep and lighting before we go, because I feel like this also plays a really important part in your hormones in general, right? So maybe we can talk about why sleep is so important. If there's a lack of sleep, do you see hormonally how that can spin somebody out? Does it encourage, higher levels of cortisol when people are sleep deprived? I don't know how deep that can go, but if you can kind of touch on that a little bit, why it's so important, and then how lighting affects how we sleep.
Okay.
It's a lot to unpack, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, Misha, that could be an
a
entire
whole podcast itself, but let's, we could take the
Okay.
next 10 minutes and
Sure.
let's see the most important parts of this.
Yeah, let's do that. It's when we were choosing the name for what I was going to have for myself on social media, Hormone Specialist at first seemed a little bit restrictive, but yet when you see how it kind of comes back to that, all these other areas, it kind of seems to be at the epicenter. And sleep is a good example of it. The way the lack of sleep has its impact on our body is through hormones. Hormones are the messengers in your body. They code for certain activity and make it happen on demand. If those are whacked and those are off, then you're gonna struggle, and it can happen in so many ways. So then these essential elements evolve from that, sort of like spokes in a wheel. So, and sleep is one of them. When you're sleep deprived, and cortisol is often the key villain in these processes, and it's very active in this one too. If you can't, but it's complex, it goes in deep. But if you just think about this, when you're stressed, and stress is such a broad term, but it means anything that is making the body respond to something and using energy. Stress, trauma, physical trauma, emotional trauma, spiritual trauma, anything that, and you can feel it right here in your gut.
Isn't it amazing how there is that connection?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll think about something stressful, and all of a sudden you feel it right down in that center point of your stomach.
You know why that is?
I think there's like this gut-brain connection, but I don't. I would love you to explain that.
Well,
I know it's all connected.
I think it's because the chief organ for producing cortisol is your adrenal glands. They sit right on top of your kidneys, right about there. And it's like
getting ready to run from the tiger, right?
Yeah.
The metaphorical tiger.
Yep. So I'm squeezing, and I'm going to inject a little bit of this into the bloodstream because you've got to be ready to act. That makes
so much sense, because it's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah. So when you don't get enough sleep, you're not prepared, you're not rested, your body is not functioning properly, and therefore it perceives as what we call a non-threatening stress.
Like opening an email.
Yeah.
Right? So many people stress out about opening up emails. I mean, I can't say that. Sometimes I open my email too, and there's like all these unread messages, and I'm like, ugh, like it is a stress response. Like, I mean, I have time to go through this all right now. I don't,
It is.
But anyways, I digress.
The term non-threatening is interesting because it really is threatening, but it's not physically threatening to you.
Yeah, it's not life-threatening.
It's not life-threatening.
It just creates a threatening response because it's stressful.
But we turn it into that.
Right.
Right. And the less sleep we have.
Body maybe doesn't really know the difference, right?
It doesn't really. It's got one way to react to this, and this is its chief way. And it slows your gut. It takes away, shunts energy from everything else, and makes it available in your muscles, so that you can run or fight. And so that's not good on your digestion, as you can imagine.
No, unless you need to run or fight.
Right.
And in that case, it would be very warranted and a great response.
Yeah. So I view it like a toxin. Stress is like a toxin. It's very much the same strength as something like that, because the body has to deal with it, and it has to use energy.
And so I know that you said earlier, like, I don't know a whole lot about your field, but me as a professional athlete, I actually like having that stress response before a fight. Now, I've gone through, I've been fighting.
You're probably one of the few people using it for its intended purpose.
Yes, I think so. And that's why I wanted to highlight this, is that there is a point for me where I welcome that at a certain point of my warm-up, right? Because as an athlete, I've become great at compartmentalizing. And if I really don't want to experience something at a time, there's a pretty good chance that I can put it in a box until another time. And there have been times before fights when I'm like, I don't want to be stressed at all. Performances have been flat, right? Because I've just, anytime that's approached, nope, you shove it back down, relax, think about something that makes me happy. And I've realized it's my body telling me that I'm ready for combat, because I'm going into a full-on fist fight. And I need to allow that response for my body to do what it needs to do best. Because
that's an automated process. And for you to be able to relegate that to automated means you don't have to summon it all up on your own. It's there. Cortisol just did it. It recruited all the energy you need in all the right places.
And the beautiful counter side to that is I can also recognize that when I get stressed out opening my emails, or, I'm got to pick up my kids and I'm running a little bit late, and I can say, oh, I know what that is, and it's not for this moment. So I'm going to take a deep breath, or 3, and I'm just going to let that calm down. Like we're going to back away from that. We don't need to run for the tiger. We're not actually getting in a cage fight this time, Misha. You're
Perfect.
Good.
That's called meditation.
Yeah.
Good job.
It is. So just some little tricks of the trade, because life is stressful, and you're never going to avoid stress. So I'm never going to sit here and tell someone just have a less stressful life. It will never happen. It's just how you deal with the stress every time it comes at you. Do you acknowledge it, and do you realize even what's happening, and are you able to do something about it?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it.
So let's go back to what you were talking about, though, with this cascade of hormone and effects and the sleep.
So what it does is it allows for an inflammatory state to be dominant. And that, we're talking about an energy drag. That's huge. And it's damaging because it produces other things, reactive oxygen species and other that have a proper function, but they're being misused. And the less sleep you have, the more the body's going to turn to that. That's probably the quickest in the time that we have way that I could.
I think that's a great place to kind of get people to understand that this is, there's more to it. There's more to unpack, but I think that's the basics of it.
But light, should we talk about?
Yes.
Okay. So light is so important. The body has evolved or was created to use light and to use certain types of light. Man has created light for his purposes, his own purposes, many of which are financial. And that means this light uses far less energy, and so this is preferred. And so, you know what? Let's mandate it. Let's make the law that you can't even sell these other kinds of lights.
I didn't even hear about that until I think Dave Asprey was talking about how before it got mandated, he went and bought a bunch of, what's the good kind of light bulbs?
Incandescent.
He bought like 200 incandescent light bulbs before they were like not mandated otherwise. So.
And I don't understand. It must not be a full ban because you can still get them. You can get them on HomeDepot.com, Lowe's.
Okay.
You can still get incandescent lights. And it's about the wavelength of the light. Honestly, we've gone to these, and the temperature of the light, these 4,000 K bright white lights, that's the typical fluorescent in an office setting.
Right.
That does nothing for your body. In fact, to the extent that it replaces infrared light, which is in sunlight, it's in fire, the light from fire, like a candle.
Oh, it is. That makes sense. Yeah.
And incandescent bulbs, which are a glowing filament, it sends out the right wavelength of light that one is not going to have a counter effect on the release of melatonin, because melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, gets you ready to go to bed, go to sleep, reads off of light. As the sun goes down, the angle that it takes, it becomes more yellow.
Yes,
and becomes,
that golden.
Mm-hmm.
That's when, all the Instagram models like to take their selfies, because it's good lighting.
Uh-huh.
The golden light, the morning light and the evening light.
Yeah, very flattering. Right? And it's calming. It really
It
is.
is.
When you look at it, it's just, when you see a picture, like a Kincaid painting, his masterful use of light, it evokes emotion of calm and relaxation. So that's important. Infrared is that important spectrum, infrared and near infrared, and that has a definite physiological
and we
effect on
don't
the
see
skin.
that. That's not light that we see.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, it's
Correct.
invisible to us, but it has an effect on us. Chickens see it, actually, ironically. Did you know that? Chickens see infrared light?
Mm-mm.
That's why they're always awake before we are in the mornings, because the infrared light starts coming out.
Police helicopters see it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Have you seen the videos where they've got this guy here? There he is, a great big white
Yeah,
outline of a body. He thinks he's hiding.
right.
That infrared actually allows the mitochondria, and it can penetrate like 1.5 inches deep into the skin. And the mitochondria interact with that and actually create energy.
How cool is that?
It's amazing. When you think of energy, you think of it's got to come from a fuel source that I need to eat or something.
And then you think how scary it is that they call us now the indoor generation, because we spend 90 or 95% of our time indoors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's important to get outside, but probably more important, let's just not fight against the tide here. Probably better just replace some of your house lights, at least the ones you use in the evening, with cooler white. And there's different kinds of indexes of this light too that you can get, but definitely not the really bright ones, because they're gonna keep you awake.
I feel like dimmer switches are a great investment. I have a lot of dimmer switches in my house, so that we can kind of slowly bring that light down.
Yeah.
You have dimmers? You use dimmers?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm all about lighting and mood. It
Me
could just
too.
soften things. Even indirect light is great, but this infrared is just incredibly valuable physiologically. And that's what I don't think most people understand about it. You see these infrared, if it's the proper wavelength, they work. These therapies that use infrared, they use them to heat saunas too, and that's great because you kind of get a double value there, the heat and the infrared.
Yeah.
But it's really valuable, and
Don't the
amazing.
lights flicker at like different speeds or something like that? Is that part of what disrupts the circadian rhythm? And I also remember learning a statistic from somebody I felt like was trustworthy, but I can't remember who at this point, but this was interesting. So we can get a big melatonin suppression from artificial light or any bright light at night, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Children are almost twice as susceptible. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, to melatonin suppression. I think for us it's like 40% or something. Theirs is 80, 90%. I couldn't tell you exactly why. Maybe it was Dr. Rhonda Patrick that was talking about that, how much more sensitive children are to light at night. So I'm really big on light, and putting it down, especially lower, is also better, because our eyes, for whatever reason, the bottom half of our eyes when the light comes in is we're meant to see light from overhead. You think about the sun and everything. Mm-hmm. So if you have a night light that you can put for a child, and you can keep it lower to the ground, and that light is kind of reflecting upwards into our eyes as opposed to downward, then the light receptors that would wake you up from the sun being overhead are not as activated. So that's another, maybe a little trick that you can do if you care about light for yourself or for your children. Put it lower on the ground.
Which makes sense as to why night lights would be down there low,
Mm-hmm.
and why a night light, you can use a 4-watt incandescent bulb, because if you have to wake up in the night, you want the light hitting your retina to be in that wavelength.
Yeah.
Brief exposures to bright light isn't be a problem, but Dr. Bruce, what's his first name? Do you remember?
Is it Michael?
Michael Bruce, yeah, Breus. I like his work on sleep. He's got great information and great work that he's done. So I recommend him to go deeper into this. I'm not certainly a sleep expert, but it most definitely has effects on hormones. Melatonin is a hormone. Sends a message.
There we go. Well, I think this has been very informational. It was just too much fun talking to you. I could double down on this easily, but for the sake of our time and the listeners, I think we'll have to wrap up. I hope that we can do this again in the future, because I know there are so many other things I would love to talk to you about. Insulin, allulose, I know, is a fun one. There's so many great topics. So I think we'll want to get into that the next time that we do this. But for today, I think this is a lot to chew on. I hope that you as the listener took away from this as much as I did, and that you are able to make some small changes that make big impacts over time in your life. And Layne, thank you for your expertise today. You were just wonderful. I appreciate you having me here in Salt Lake in the studio. And just thank you.
It's been fun meeting you, and absolutely my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.